Well, most sane Americans think the IRS targeting conservatives wasn't a very good idea. Even President Obama had to acknowledge that. But Democratic Congressman Jim McDermott didn't get the memo, apparently. Here's part of what he said during yesterday's hearings.
None of your organizations were kept from organizing or silenced. We are talking about whether or not the American taxpayers will subsidize your work. I get the feeling that many of you and my Republican colleagues just don't believe, or you believe you should be free from political targeting, but that you should be free from any scrutiny at all.
What? So then he tries to defend himself when he came on the Fox News channel with Megyn Kelly earlier today.
They can use their First Amendment rights. Nobody at the IRS stopped them from doing that.
But Congressman McDermott, that ignores the reality of the testimony you heard. Jim McDermott talked about how they lost a $30,000 donation because a lot of people don't want to donate to groups that haven't received that stamp of approval in officially becoming a 501c4.
That was not under testimony, under oath. I don't know. He didn't offer any proof.
He was lying? Is this your answer to that?
No,
that anybody who claims that they lost donations, they're misleading?
Kelly, you are putting words into my mouth.
I'm asking you. I'm asking you.
You are putting words in my mouth. Stop it.
One of the victims should have responded to McDermott the same way, almost like a child. Greg, I thought this was so detached and so dismissive. And so you mean to tell me if these Tea Party groups would have taken Jim McDermott's advice, right, started to raise money, spent the money, never get IRS certified, and then they get reported by the local elections board, and then they call the IRS, they can say, Jim McDermott said I could.
Yeah, he's like a freeze-dried William Shatner. Notice that? You know, I actually believe that the next presidential candidate that vows to end the IRS may actually be the next president of the United States. It used to sound nutty coming from Ron Paul, but it could be brilliant coming from Rand Paul, because this is the time, this is the atmosphere. You can actually knock off a corrupt enterprise because you have the evidence and you have somebody who can articulate a fair tax, and you could show, now you have all this evidence of how awful this is. How could you not lose? How could you not convince America that this is time to get rid of a horrible, horrible thing?
Dana, these groups did follow the rules. They followed every single rule. Could you imagine if they wouldn't have, how merciless the IRS would be, seeing how merciless they are when they have dotted all their
and that is one of the sad things, is when you see somebody that actually tries to do the right thing and then they get targeted anyway. What I hope is that Jim McDermott is on TV every single day. I'd love to see him out there. I think he would be the best possible thing to help the Republican Party. We're going to talk about old white guys, being too many old white guys who are out of touch in the Republican Party. He's a perfect example. I thought Megyn Kelly handled that great. To that point about they should have known not to answer the questions, they should have known that it was so crazy. If the tables were turned, would he say the same about voter suppression? When there are accusations about voter suppression efforts going into black communities and there's complaints about that, can you imagine that if the answer from a Republican congressman was, well, you should have known better. You should have just known better because you should be smarter than that. That is exactly what he is saying about those people.
Or to Anita Hill or Sandra Fluck, Eric, you should have known better. Going after the victim, it would be wildly inappropriate if a Republican did it. Of course, a Republican hasn't done it. What do you think of McDermott really, I mean, even going further today on Megyn's show?
I got to tell you, first of all, I agree with Greg. Rand Paul, also Ted Cruz, two guys who say get rid of the IRS for different versions of it, but two great Republicans coming up. Keep your eye on those guys. Let's talk about McDermott for a second. This guy, he blamed the group that was applying for tax status, and then he blamed the tax code also. McDermott has to be very careful. I'm not sure he even realizes what he's doing. 501c4s are what they were applying for, tax-exempt status. 501c5 in the same exact manual, same part of the tax code, 501c5s give tax-exempt status to labor unions. Those are all Democrat-funded, donated to Democrats' re-elections. If they take that status away, they will carry him and anyone else who agrees with him out of Congress the very next day. They don't want to lose 501c5 tax-free status.
We keep hearing about Republican overreaching on this one. I actually think this is Democrat overreaching. And Stephanie Cutter, who is a political staffer of the White House, or used to be, she now claims that she sat in those meetings with former IRS Chief Douglas Shulman. Listen.
Many of those meetings were for healthcare implementation. I was in them with him. So there's nothing nefarious going on.
Do you trust her, Bob? Phew.
It's not a question.
I think she was there.
Let me make a point that I think everybody seems to be missing here is I don't know of a single government questionnaire that has not been prepared and it's been published, and it's the thing that you do that you normally ask everybody about whether you want to see 3, 4, or 5, or anything in government. Why doesn't somebody get the standard questions that you're asked of tax-exempt organizations?
They have them.
And wait a second. If they have them, put them up against the one that they were asked.
They did that, Bob. That's the problem.
No, I've not heard somebody say this.
No, it's the same standard questions, whether you're a liberal or conservative group. It's the questions, well, you didn't fill us out properly. We need more information.
Then it seems to me that it's the Republican on a board in the committee room ought to say, here's your standard questionnaire. Here's the questionnaire you ask. These are very different. Why?
Well, they wanted more information. They answered the question.
But they don't do that as a normal course of events.
Conservatives.
They don't do that as a course of events.
Well, they're not supposed to.
Well, they certainly are supposed to follow a set of guidelines.
And at the same time, Bob, at the same time, I don't want to get Greg in here, that they are targeting conservative groups. Greg, it looks like Sarah Hall Ingram, who is the commissioner of the tax-exempt office, who is deciding who is tax-exempt and who wasn't, got a bonus of $103,000 that went up during the years of targeting. And we have this reports of lavish conferences and Star Trek videos. And finally today, someone was suspended on some minor infraction.
Well, they can't find the receipts of all of these expenses. They don't know how much the conference costs. They're like, you know what they're like? They're like kids on vacation. The parents take care of us. We're the parents in this case. We don't know. We know how much the hotel rooms cost at Disneyland, but the kids don't. They're acting like kids on our dime. We should garnish. We should do to the IRS what the IRS does to us. Garnish their wages. Every single employee has to pay, and all of that goes to a rebate to the taxpayer.
Good idea.
It is. We're getting rid of the IRS.